So that being said, to offer the chance for any questions, if anyone has anything they'd like to ask of any of us.
This is all well and good, this pledge that you've signed here, the A pledge sort of thing. Looking at it, it's how is any of it measurable? What you said you're going to do and what all the rest of it. There's no, how you say we're going to be held to account. How are you going to be held to account? How is any of your 8 pledges measurable?
I think that's a good question, and I hope that it's a question that we're consistently asked, because now that we've made this public commitment and been so clear about it, we are now in a situation where we will have to justify every measure we do, and we will have other states members, the media, members of the public able to say to us, well, you've signed up to this, so when you are bringing forward another measure under the improvement plan, or whether we bring forward the MTFP or a budget, we will have to justify it against this and explain why what we are doing is in line with what we've pledged to Jersey's children and young people. And I think it's fair to say that that this pledge, we will be in breach of it right away, because there are, as we know from this report, there are areas that we are currently failing. This is part of that journey, so we may never be fully compliant with this pledge. It's about our ambition, and it's about saying these are the criteria by which we want to be measured against. People will have their own subjective view on that. People may have different interpretations of how you would fulfil this pledge. But I hope, as Children's Minister, I hope that I'm put under pressure in the States Assembly from other members who will say to me, well, you've pledged that you were going to do X, Y and Z. Why haven't you done this yet? Why is it taking so long to do this? Where's the funding going to come for this? And those will and should be difficult questions, and I will have to do my best to argue them, and it will provide a framework for people challenging me and challenging all of us if we don't deliver on it. And I think that public statement hasn't existed before, and I think it can only be a positive thing that we have it now.
And just quickly, with the signatures, you said you're going to put it in the States members' room. So are you going to be, I don't know if naming and shaming is the right word, but will you be holding, people might refuse to sign this. Are we going to know who has signed it and who hasn't, especially in the way of elected representatives?
Absolutely. I think, Pledge 8 is about publishing our clear standards and being held to account for it. I want this to be updated regularly for the public so they can see this and know what it looks like and see who has signed it. And if people don't want to sign it, they'll have to justify why. And we'll have to listen to why they're not signing it, and we will have to try to convince them that it is worth signing it. It's not necessarily about naming and shaming people, but we will have to try to justify it to those who haven't been convinced yet. And we may have to do that because this concept of a corporate parent isn't necessarily understood by everybody. And the reports have pointed this out, and it's been my experience speaking to others that not everybody seems to realise that it's their responsibility to look out for Jersey's children too. Until now, the position has been that the corporate parent has been the Health and Social Services Minister, when in actual fact it's all of us, and so it's the Chief Minister, public service leaders, all states members, and it's going to be difficult explaining that to people, but it will be part of that necessary culture change we've got to make, so that there is nobody working in that public service who thinks that this isn't their responsibility and they can just ignore things. That may be difficult, but that culture change is absolutely necessary. Not just the legislative changes mentioned in the report, but that culture change as well.
Will you put the pledge up online and so we can see who signed it and who hasn't signed it?
Yes.